IDubbbz finally made his long-awaited return to Content Cop, and all I can say is that it's not good. For the longest time, IDubbbz Content Cops have been remembered fondly for being comedic, having strong criticisms, and disapproval of some bad actors on YouTube at the time, so it should come at no surprise that this video failed. At least to the people that were excited for the Content Cop return, which happened to be a lot of the old crowd of viewers that, let's be real here, were probably hoping for a brief glimpse of the old IDubbbz when realistically that would just never happen. On the other hand though, the Content Cop video seems to have landed pretty well with his newfound audience, and despite what the like to dislike ratios online may portray, I wouldn't take them very seriously at all, given that a lot of these plugins have a huge, and I mean huge, tendency to miscalculate. But anyways, while the Content Cop is an obvious change of form to introduce itself to a new audience and potential growth, I'm just going to say, it's obvious that it was done at the unfair expense of Ethan Klein and a friendship that IDubbbz never really took that seriously, according to him. Now, to be clear, while there are some very good criticisms you can make of Ethan Klein, such as his tendency to be ignorant, petty, vindictive, and rash, IDubbbz did not do a good job of properly presenting any of these criticisms, and to be fair, given how many times Ethan has been rightfully criticized for some of these things in the past, I can't imagine it would have been any more fresh the nth time around. But there are some issues, and I'll just speedrun them. If you want my full unfiltered take, you can watch my most recent live VODs in the links below. For the first 30 or so minutes of Content Cop H3, you will immediately notice that the video automatically aligns itself with what you could only refer to as Ethan Klein's online enemies, which is a huge slap in the face to anyone who enjoyed Content Cop in the past, as in the past, Ethan would have been the one taking their place in an attack against whatever online personality was in the hot seat at the time. This pretty much sort of sets the message of this video. IDubbbz has chosen to align himself against Ethan Klein, with people who have treated Ethan in some of the most foul and unfair ways possible when it comes to internet discourse. Now, before we can get into any of this, we have to lay out some groundwork to better understand why this is such a big deal. It was around the beginning of March, if not around the time when Ethan Klein's biggest detractors, such as the community responsible for H3 Snark and its sister subreddits, began floating around the theory that Ethan Klein was a negligent parent, given how their children had contracted Giardia. It was quickly speculated that the only way for this to have been the case was for their children to have been quote-unquote crawling around in dog feces and consuming said feces. At least that was the general idea they had. Now, to be clear, this was not the case, but people were quick to run with the idea anyways. People like Bad Empanada, who framed the situation in the most bad faith way possible. And then, Denims, who platformed Bad Empanada, then and in the past, and his bad faith analysis of the situation. Many people were quick to jump to conclusions and start getting behind the idea of calling CPS, which eventually led into Ethan Klein's real life. I don't have to explain why this is bad, and why this would get Ethan incredibly angry. Your family being at risk of being separated even by the smallest percent because of the schizo theories of unhinged bad faith lunatics online, and the perpetuation of false allegations would anger anyone. So how does Froggy Tonic play into this? As IDubbbz points out, Froggy Tonic has been increasingly more critical of Ethan over the years, with a few of Froggy's criticisms being fair here and there, and others being a lot more rash. While IDubbbz does acknowledge that Froggy has been incredibly gross and excessive at times, rather than to acknowledge the compounding factors of spreading malicious, baseless snark during a harassment campaign, he instead says this.
So yes, I am willing to admit that my former editor was being very nasty, uncharitable, and fucked up towards Ethan and Hila on Twitter. But Ethan and Hila are doing the same shit on their podcast, so I don't want to fucking hear it.
Terrorist supporter.
The CEO of Twitch.
File.
IDubbbz completely deflects the issue at hand here. In the past, IDubbbz has been vocal against the aftermath that follows his Content Cops, which would be heavy and unfair harassment of the person being criticized, or so he says. Ironically enough, what IDubbbz neglects to mention throughout the entirety of the video is the harassment that Ethan receives, which is perpetuated by the people he directly decided to align himself with in this video. Instead, he basically says, but you do it too, Ethan, so it's not like it matters, as if these out-of-context moments could possibly equal to the coordinated malicious behavior exhibited on Snark and then platformed by people like Denims. There are a couple of points IDubbbz brings up which I can understand and give it a bit of reason to. IDubbbz makes the arguments that Ethan isn't entitled to his defense, that Ethan is a pretty transactional person, Ian and Nissa should not be expected to put their necks on the line while Ethan and Hila hold previous favors over their heads as a coupon they're ready to cash in, and I can understand a lot of that if it wasn't for the fact that there are significant factors at hand here that would shift how any person would reason with this. In the Content Cop, Ian acknowledges Denim as a friend and good person. Yet Denims was one of the main people to platform this Jardia conspiracy, which directly affected Ethan's real life. In a situation this drastic, it would probably be reasonable to come in and say, yeah, these people are being a bit too unreasonable. Ethan is not neglecting his kids or family. But what IDubbbz does instead is justify his inactions, and even goes fully into disavowing Ethan, and basically admits that, yeah, IDubbbz is a fair weather friend that doesn't want to be friends with someone while the going gets rough, which is absolutely insane to think about. I can understand this if Ethan was overreacting and being toxic about a non-issue, but that's simply not what's going on here. IDubbbz directly ignores the amount of harassment and mistreatment Ethan has faced and decides to side with the people who perpetuate these problems. All of the people credited in the description have directly platformed Bad Empanada, for example, who even snarkers have pointed fingers at for the CPS scare.
I'll say it for anyone who doesn't know, Anissa is half Lebanese and half Irish. For anyone unfamiliar, the Irish have been on the receiving end of a lot of oppression and genocide. On the part of the Lebanese, they've received a lot of oppression and attacks from the IDF. So Anissa is very well familiar with the propaganda and the shit coming out of Israel. Choosing now, out of all the times, to be like, please defend me. No, we're not gonna fucking defend you.
Rudy was saying that Palestinians are taught at 2 years old to kill Americans.
Do we have that one?
I mean,
Like,
just the other day, BB fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about.
he looked mean. I thought he was mean just because he looked mean.
No, it's not.
So yes, you caught us. We're not gonna run to your defense when, I don't know, we follow people.
Not only is IDubbbz being incredibly bad faith here, but he is quite literally taking an us versus you approach towards Ethan and Hila Klein. While there is some criticism that you could give to H3H3 for not being too vocal against the atrocities committed by the IDF, IDubbbz does use a very poorly framed clip of Hila Klein, which she had apologized for and admitted it was a poor choice of words to call Gallant a good guy. Whether or not you want to accept that apology or not, or whether you believe she is or isn't sorry, is up to you. There is a criticism to be made, yes. However, I don't think this is the best example to use.
So,
The problem...
okay, if you want to hang out with those people and have no spine and not stand up for another girl that stood up for you, enjoy your new friends.
She's friends with people like Denims.
I know,
Her
yeah.
Which I'll
she's
show.
friends with
Denims is
Denims.
actually participating in this whole Child Protective Service lie.
Yeah,
Which I'll
and if
show you
you're
guys
friends with
instead.
them, then you're seeing what they're saying.
You'll notice that Ethan and Hila start talking about this Denims character. Originally, the complaint was about my former editor. He's been chatting shit about Ethan and Hila for the past year at least. They only care about it now because I guess it was spoon-fed to them via their Reddit that's clearly looking out for them. Now,
IDubbbz is being incredibly dishonest here. Ethan and Hila's main complaint is the fact that they are being deeply affected by the snark lies that keep being spread and perpetuated by people like Froggy and people like Denims. It's not something that was spoon-fed to them by their Reddit. Froggy and Denims have directly just used snark theories as a reason to sling shit at Ethan. Froggy, for example, bringing up something that he would have only found off the snark subreddit, which is that Ethan led to his dog's premature death. This also being around the same time that snarkers were going heavy on the Jardia claims. It's not insane for Ethan to feel at least a little betrayed that you'd rather align with those people than to take even a small step to correct slander levied against someone who you've been friends with for close to a decade. What IDubbbz is doing here is that he is literally just choosing one form of harassment over Ethan being petty and vindictive. And yes, again, while you can criticize Ethan for some of his more extreme approaches like going after random nobodies on air, that's not what IDubbbz is even trying to go for in this video. His complaint is literally that Ethan expressed his dissatisfaction that Anissa just ignored the situation instead of offering even a little bit of a middle ground. While you could argue that Ethan isn't entitled to that at all, this is drastically changed by the fact that the side they directly align with is, for about the millionth time I'm mentioning it in this video, the ones who have perpetuated dangerous, unsubstantiated claims against Ethan and Hila Klein. I'm not saying that IDubbbz owes it to the guy. IDubbbz is his own person. These people can all make their own decisions and obviously aren't bound by Ethan. But it's interesting to see where IDubbbz's priorities lie. There are plenty of things you can criticize Ethan for. There are plenty of things that you can accurately call to. But it's evident that IDubbbz is only interested in appealing to a new audience, which seems to be working pretty well for him. To be clear, I can't say that I like any of these people. I think that it's more than fair to say that sometimes Ethan can be rash, petty, vindictive, and sometimes even ignorant of the politics he talks about, but this video is filled with so many poorly framed arguments, contradictions, out-of-context clips, and irrelevant jabs that the video itself just goes against what Content Cop is remembered for. So when IDubbbz says, I think Content Cop should be as fair as possible, just remember that most of the arguments and claims he makes in this video are poorly framed and neglect to mention a lot of the motivations behind some of Ethan's disappointment. While I would like to make a full dissection, I already did, twice, and these streams are linked in the description. So if you're interested, take a look. That's all I got for today. Later.